Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Women in Motorsports. Joe Samaniego here, along with Ben Schneider and Daniel Zeri from Racers, the girls behind the helmet. We encourage everyone to participate in the chat room, leave a comment. Also, a big thank you to our Patreon subscribers, Con the Show, Mark and Robin, and our newest member, David. They invest in the Grid Network each and every month. You can do that as well. Linked in the video description, or you could do a one-time contribution through Buy Me a Coffee, as these fine folks have done so. You can even buy coffee for a particular honor personality. Links in the video description, and you can have that done in less than 5 minutes. Folks, we have a very exciting show, and Ben, Daniel, I gotta start off with Jamie Chadwick, the three-time W Series racer, champion. She made her INDY NXT debut at St. Pete's. Overall, a solid day, 13th place finish, despite going to the tire barrier, bringing out a caution. She completed 39 out of the 40 laps, so she finished one lap down from the race leaders. And she's 14th in the points. For folks not familiar, of course, there are bonus points for leading a lap, leading the most laps, and getting the pole. Ben, starting with you. Overall, was this kind of day one should anticipate from Jamie Chadwick in her INDY NXT debut?
I think so. And when we look back at the Chris Griffiths test last year, obviously Jamie was the slowest of the 16 cars there, but I think that's to be expected in some ways. She's coming from a completely different type of vehicle, the W Series over to the INDY NXT Series, so it's going to take a little bit of time for her to get up to speed. I thought she did a solid job during the race, keeping the car clean until the very end there. Obviously, she was caught up in a couple of incidents towards the end. She was a little bit off the pace. I was trying to keep an eye on it as the same time the Formula One race was going on. It looked to me like she was about a second to a second and a half slower per lap than the rest of the field. So there's definitely a lot of room for improvement, a lot of room to take some steps forward. But it's going to take some time. We can't expect her to, start competing for wins right out of the gate just because she's driving an Andretti car. This is going to be a transition for her. So I would definitely look more towards the second half of the year. And I think we'll talk about this in just a moment here, but some different types of tracks as well might be better suited to what she's used to over in Europe. I think that's when we're going to see the potential that she truly has this season in INDY NXT.
I completely echo with what you just said. I believe that also she did quite well also in practice and in qualifying. She was less than a second from pole position in qualifying, 8/10th. Which I think it was a good start of her season. The race obviously was a little bit challenging, especially towards the end, with a couple more contacts that what she would have wanted, what everyone would have liked to see. But as you said, I perfectly agree with what you just said, that we couldn't really expect her to enter the series and start winning or races or finishing on the podium straight away. It will definitely take some time. Obviously, we also said this in the weeks prior to her debut. The car is significantly faster than the W Series one, which is also a step forward, also compared to Indy Pro. So more drivers also that raced in that series were a bit more closer to the concept of car that is the Indy NXT compared to what the Tatus car that Jamie used in the last couple of years in W Series and in former regional European Championship in 2020 raced. The Dallara and the Tatus car are quite different in the philosophy of the car, really. So I just believe that it will take a little bit of time from her. And also, as Ben said, I completely also agree on the fact that she might be more, more confident coming into some circuits, some road courses that she might be that might be closer to what she's used to in Europe. I do feel that she lacked a little bit of confidence on the braking, especially during the races. She was mainly trying to stay out of the walls. And not really being on the limits. So I think that coming into Barber Motorsports at the next event, that will help immensely. Also trying to figure out what her real gaps are to the front of the field.
So we know the W Series cars, they have less horsepower than the INDY NXT cars. Also, they have less horsepower than the USF Pro 2000 cars. Linus Lindquist, he had mentioned last year, it is a big learning curve. if you're coming from Europe straight over to Indy next. The next race, though, is at Barber Motorsports Park, a purpose-built road course, and many have said that Barber Motorsports Park reminds them of a racetrack in Europe, with some of the corners, the elevation changes, compared to where Jamie made her debut, a street course where you have the walls so close, as you mentioned, Daniel. You have not only the street course aspect, but also a wide runway, front straightaway, very unique course. I gotta start with you, Daniel. Could going to a track that resembles something more familiar territory for Jamie Chadwick be an advantage for her, despite learning this brand new car would have a lot more horsepower?
I do definitely think so. As I mentioned, I think the starting from a street course in St. Petersburg, obviously it's a bit of a tradition for IndyCar to start from St. Pete. But I do believe that it was a little bit of a challenge for many of the rookies across all the series racing there. There were also USF Pro 2000, USF 2000, also the GT America. We've seen some pretty, and also in IndyCar, of course, we've seen some pretty big crashes in that track, especially at turn 3 and turn 4. So I think that was a bit of a challenge for a rookie to start straight from a very challenging street circuit. And definitely, I think Jamie was really, especially in qualifying, in practice and qualifying, she was really not pushing too much and just trying to keep it clean. She did manage to keep the car in one piece until the later stages of the race. But I do believe, as you mentioned, that the Barber Motorsports Park is more common to what she's used to. Even with the elevation changes and everything, it's you don't have the wall right there if you're making a mistake. So I think that we will see Jamie being a little bit closer to the top 10.
Yeah, I think I don't have too much to add there. I think Daniel hit the nail on the head with what she's used to, the types of tracks that they run over in Europe. I think Barber certainly is going to resemble that a lot more than St. Pete. I do think there's still going to be the challenges of getting used to the car, and of course, every track has its own unique, different circumstances that a driver who's never been there before might have to take a few laps to get up to speed to really start to nail there. But I do think this is going to be a better opportunity for Jamie to go out there. Top 10, I still think might take some attrition, and we did see a lot of attrition in St. Pete this week. So, who knows what's going to happen. And, of course, we've got a very strong INDY NXT field this year, stronger than we've had in years, which is great to see for the series. But I do think Jamie will be a little bit closer to being on pace with the rest of the pack to a track like Barber than a track like St. Pete, where she was this past weekend.
And, of course, Barber Motorsports Park, that is quite a ways, April 30th. So quite some time till we get there. Plenty of opportunity for James Chadwick, especially with the simulators. Of course, at St. Petersburg, we also had Lindsay Brewer in USF Pro 2000 at St. Pete. She finished both races on the lead lap, 13th and 16th in race 1 and 2, respectively. Daniel, one driver a lot of fans have been following as well, Sophia Flörsch. She made her Formula 3 racing debut for 2023. Can you tell us about her race weekend?
I think Sophia had, she was coming back to Formula 3 after 2020. And she's been away from single seaters for 3 years. She's been racing in sports car, in LMP2 machinery, and also GT3 with 1 year in DTM. So very different, even though the LMP2 cars are high downforce cars. So still, she told me also that the driving style is not that different. But it definitely will take some time for her to reacclimate with the car. Also, she's with a new team, PHM Racing by Sharu. So also that will take some time even for the team to get up to speed in this very competitive championship. I do believe that she did quite well in Bahrain. She was P24 in qualifying out of 30 cars. She was within the 1 second in qualifying, so also that is quite good for a first time in Bahrain. They also only had 2 testing days in Bahrain before the start of the season. for her to be back in a single seater car. And I do believe that she did quite well in the races as well, especially in race 1, where the team made a mistake just before the start of the race. They changed her tire when her car was on the grid. That is not allowed for the FIA Formula 3 rules, so she had to start from pit lane. And obviously, with 30 cars starting from pit lane was not very not off to a great start for her. Luckily, there was a safety car, so she was again in the pack after the safety car. And did some good overtaking. She was right there in the battles all the races. She finished P22 in race 1 and P20, so at top 20 in race 2, which was a little bit cleaner. But I do believe that as a first weekend, she told us after the race that it was mainly data collecting for her. And also in Melbourne, where she has never been there. Also, any of the other teams have never been there. So it will be again a little bit of a data collecting weekend for her and trying to, again reacclimating with the car. But I think as a first weekend, she had no accidents, no anything like that. Even though when you're starting down the order, that's a bit of a challenge. Kept it clean, top 20. I think it was a very positive return to FIA Formula 3 for Sophia Flörsch.
Very exciting stuff for Sophia Flörsch, just collecting all the data, getting the track time, and then hopefully progress each and every race. We'll be following her. And of course, you can follow her on racersbehindthehelmet.com as well. Ben, second race for the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series. Unfortunately for Hailie Deegan, it's not off to a great start this year, Ben. 2 races, 2 crashes, unfortunately. 31st in the points. Just 2023 just seems has not been a good start at all for her. For that team right now, are their best chances of getting into the playoffs win, or is it still too early to hit that mode of go out there and try to get the win to advance into the playoffs?
To be honest, Joe, the Truck Series playoffs start so early. It feels kind of weird saying this after just 2 races, but she might already be in, a mode where you have to think about winning a race to make it in. I don't know if there's going to be enough spots for her to be able to climb the standings and point her way in at this point. Now, I will say this. We are in an era of stage racing. She did finish 4th in stage 1 at Daytona. She has a very strong ThorSport truck that she's driving this year. So if she can pick up stage points all throughout the season, it might be very well possible for her to continue to climb up the standings and get back into that position. It also might be possible if Kyle Busch keeps stealing these Truck Series wins as a Cup driver, keeping those spots open for other truck regulars as the season goes on. That might open up some more spots for drivers to get into the playoffs on points. So there's a lot of circumstances that still have to play out. Obviously, the simplest thing is just to go out and win and know that you're in the playoffs, unless we were to somehow get 11 winners in the first 16 races or whatever it is in the Truck Series these days. So, I think when you look at Hailie's situation, obviously it hasn't been the start of the year, but she would have wanted, like you were mentioning, Joe, she's gotten caught up in 2 wrecks in the first 2 races. But the circumstances that she's in right now, I think the simplest thing is just go out and win. And we also have to remember this is important as well because of where Hailie's been running relative to David Gilliland racing the last couple of years. NASCAR's waived the top 20 requirement in Xfinity and trucks to get into the playoffs, just as they waive a top 30 requirement in Cups. So it doesn't matter where Deegan is in the point standings anymore, as long as she's one of the top 10 drivers in points that has a win, and that would only come into effect if we somehow got more than 10 winners, she would be in the playoffs. She wouldn't have to worry about hitting the top 20 mark like she would have the last 2 years. So I think that's the easiest scenario for Deegan right now. Just go out, focus on trying to win a race. If playoffs are the goal, I think she would be able to do that, and that would just take her mind off of points racing, in every sense of the word. There, I don't think that even though we're only 2 races in, there's a likely scenario at this point, where you can say she's got a mountain to climb. I think it's easier to just say go out and win, then you don't have to worry about it.
Go out and win. Don't worry about the points. Overall, even though we haven't seen a whole lot of racing just because of her getting involved in the crashes. You bring up she got stage points at Daytona. Her qualifying efforts have been pretty solid this year so far. Overall, it looks like she's showing some promise. Is she just at the wrong place at the wrong time when these crashes occurred in the Truck Series?
Yeah, well, each of these first two for sure. I know some people have made the argument that, she always says she's in the wrong place at the wrong time. She gets caught up in these wrecks. Well, she wouldn't get caught up in these wrecks if she weren't running towards the back of the pack, or she'd be less likely to get caught up in those wrecks. But I think each of these first two, obviously, it doesn't really matter at Daytona. If you're running in the front, you can get in a wreck. If you're running in the back, you can get in a wreck. Anything can happen there. And again, Vegas was just a very difficult circumstance. I know some people were maybe going to put the blame on John Hunter Nemechek. I think, anytime you get four wide in the trucks, it's never bound to end well. I think that was really just more of a racing deal than anything else. So there's a lot of races still to go in the schedule. Obviously, Hailie's got a lot of opportunities to continue to show those signs of improvement that we've been wanting to see for the last couple of years. I think she's shown some good signs of speed, obviously, with her top 5 finish in the stage Daytona, and then her qualifying effort this past week in Las Vegas. I know she did fall a little bit further down the pack in the opening laps, but the speed is there, and I think the signs are there. It's just a matter of trying to put it all together throughout a race weekend. And with how many race weekends we still have left, I've got full confidence that she should be able to do that at least a couple of times this year. And we'll see if that leads to bigger and better things for her down the road.
Bigger and better things down the road. Bring in Daniel, because Daniel, one driver I know you're going to talk about was a driver that has been in the FIA Women's Motorsports, Rising Stars 2020, 2021, 16 years old. Can you tell us about this driver that a lot of folks, I think, sort of forgot about because we talk about Maya a lot, but really could be a driver that could be up on the rise?
Oh, definitely. It was a big weekend for Antonella Bassani, 16-year-old from Brazil. As you mentioned, we talked a lot about Maya Veugo, of course, the inaugural winner of that Goes On Track program, but also Bassani was twice in the finalists. A driver that so far until now, she hadn't had a lot of opportunities in race cars outside of karting. So she came back to Brazil racing karting. She did one race in TCR in South America together with her mentor, Bia Figueiredo, former IndyCar and IMSA driver. And now she's really making her debut in sports car racing, straight into GT3 in the Porsche Cup Brazil. The deal was announced on Friday, so just one day before the start of the weekend. She had never even driven the Porsche 911 GT3 Cup car before the race event in Interlagos. And she went straight into the weekend, into the season, and that was a really impressive weekend for Bassani. She qualified in P11 out of a 21 car field. She was not very happy about that. She thought that she had really not made the maximum out of their qualifying effort. In race one, she had a contact on the first lap, so kind of dropped behind a little bit on the opening lap, and then really it was all her show from then on. She made her way up the field, finishing in 7th place. So a really outstanding recovery drive for Antonella Bassani in race one, and she did even better in race two because she started from 2nd place on Sunday morning. And then really also had a fantastic start and battled for the lead of the race in the first lap. And then kind of battled around P3 and P4 throughout the race. On the 2 laps to go, she attempted a double pass around the outside of turn 1. She really wanted that win. Unfortunately, that didn't quite work out. She finished in P4, missing out on the overall podium, but still secured the class podium in the sprint challenge class. And that was a really, really positive debut for Bassani in sports car racing. I mean, let's just think about the fact that she was racing in karting and went straight into GT3 machinery with the Porsche 911 in a very competitive championship, because the The Porsche Cup Brazil is very competitive. She is now being selected as part of a program for Porsche Brazil, a young driver program that is trying to support young drivers in the Porsche One Make series. And hopefully she will receive some more support during the season, because really what she's shown in the first weekend was nothing short of impressive.
Impressive weekend, and as he said, going from karting and instead of going to the single series Formula Series to sports car, something else, and of course sports car. Definitely going to have a lot of sports car coverage, including the 12-hour Sebring coming here on the grid there. So I encourage everyone to subscribe. Now, one series, very much looking forward to providing coverage when their season start up, F1 Academy. And this was news sort of caught me by surprise. Megan Gilks, she is going to be in F1 Academy. She's going to complete the roster for Carlin Racing. She joins Abby Pulling, Jessica Edgar, the three drivers for that team. And a lot of people forget she was part of the W Series in the first inaugural season before the pandemic, 2019. And she won a reverse grid non-championship points race in the W Series that year. Of course, she's from Canada. Daniel, when it comes to Megan, we haven't seen much of her really, or talked much about her on this particular program since 2019. What has she been pretty much doing since the W Series, and how exciting is this to see her come to F1 Academy?
As you mentioned, Joe, it was quite a surprise to see Megan making her way back into this series. She raced in W Series in 2019. She was selected for the inaugural season, and at the time she was the youngest competitor in W Series in that year. She was only 18 in 2019, and it was also her first international season. She had only raced in her home country in Canada, mainly in Formula Fords. So Formula Fords to the Formula Region car used in W Series was quite a big step from her. Apart from that, she, as you mentioned, she won the reverse grid race in Assen, probably one of the most spectacular races that W Series ever produced, coming across the line thousands of a second ahead of Alice Powell. After the series in W Series, she returned to Canada when the pandemic hit. She was in the UK because she was studying in the UK. She's an engineer. She studied engineering in the UK. At the time, also, she was working at the Mercedes F1 team in Brackley. When the pandemic hit, she went back to Canada. She raced in the Formula 16000 in Canada, coming second in the championship. So I think she was back in a car that it was more similar to the Formula 4 that she was used prior to her W Series campaign. She did extremely well, had some podiums there, and in 2021 she was back in the UK. As I mentioned, she was studying in engineering. And there she raced again in Formula Fords, was again with some solid results in the UK. And last year she was racing in the inaugural championship of the GB4 series. We often talked about GB4 as a championship that provided some good opportunities to female drivers. It was a Formula 4 championship, basically using the older generation Formula Ford. But more cost effective. So it did see some great racing. It was all based in the UK. And Megan Gilks was one of the drivers there. She won a race, two races in GB4, and also had a third place finish. She finished sixth in the drivers' championship. So I think it was a very solid season for Megan. It's a driver that we haven't heard a lot from her apart from her racing weekend. So we kind of didn't expect her to make her way into the F1 Academy Championship, but it's great to see her back. She will be, as you mentioned, in the road in Carlin, racing alongside Abby Pulling. and Jessica Edgar. Also, Edgar was racing in GB4 and also had a podium finish. So it will be interesting to see Pulling and Megan Gilks. Megan Gilks was also in Barcelona at the preseason testing of W Series last year. I was there. But she eventually didn't make the cut into the W Series Championship last year. But it would be great to see her in Formula 4 cars. It will be a new car for her because, of course, in GB4 she raced in the previous generation of the Formula 4 car. But with Carlin, of course, a team that has won the British Formula 4 Championship last year, the first year where the new Tatus car was used. So an experienced team. And we're really looking forward to see Megan Gilks back on the grid.
And of course, for all the stories, check out racersbehindthehelmet.com. Get all the latest stories, full articles, including the race recap for Jamie Chadwick, Megan Gilks as well, and the news of her going to the F1 Academy. A lot of stories. And of course, click on the calendar to see the full calendar race weekend of all the female racers racing that weekend. Once again, racersbehindthehelmet.com. That leads us to our one shining moment, one moment from the past week that really stood out. Dan, we'll start with you this time. When it comes to your one shining moment, what was that moment?
I will say Jessica Bachmann. She, of course, she's very experienced in TCR and touring cars, but last weekend she made her debut in GT4 machinery. And she had 2 second-place finishes in GT Winter Series alongside Gabriela Zilkova, who was also second in her sprint race. So 3 second-place finishes for this all-female team. And Jessica Bachmann, we will, will just a couple of minutes ago, the news that she will be being this year in GB4, in GT Germany. So she will make the step up from touring cars from TCR to GT4 series in Germany, and her debut weekend in Spain at Navarra circuits, 2 second places, pretty good weekend for her.
You know, sometimes you have to celebrate the little things in life, and I know Jamie Chadwick was relieved to get this weekend under her belt. And I know it was definitely a different, challenging experience for her. I'm looking forward to seeing what she can do throughout the rest of the INDY next season. 13th place, a lap down, might not look like such a great result on paper, but when you consider the circumstances of a challenge of coming to America to race in a brand new series and the chaos that we saw in the final laps at St. Pete and INDY NXT this weekend, I'm going to give my one shining moment to Jamie Chadwick for making it through the weekend with Andretti and INDY NXT.
And I have to go the same with you, Ben. Jamie Chadwick, my one shine moment, mainly because while you bring up a lot of good points about the race, for me, having the 3-time W Series champion who has gained a lot of international attention over the years, she's done Extreme E, done other forms of motorsports, to have her here in the United States and on the road to Indy ladder system will bring a lot of international attention. That's where I feel is just really exciting for fans, and especially young female fans in the United States. Come to a motorsport race weekend where there's Indy next, and to potentially see Jamie Chadwick on the track performing, learning. It's really very exciting opportunity for all that, and I'm just very thrilled. Jamie Chadwick is my one shiny moment, and we want to thank everyone for tuning in to today's show. Be sure to comment, like, and subscribe. Be sure to follow us on social media and subscribe to us right here on YouTube. We're less than 25 subscribers away from 600 right here on YouTube, getting closer to our goal of 1,000 before the Indianapolis 500. And of course, Patreon, invest in us each and every month. You'll get a thank you card from myself and definitely have your name read off at the beginning of each program. And of course, you do a one-time contribution, buy me a coffee. We'll thank you on the air when you buy us a coffee. And of course, you can buy a coffee for a particular on-air personality right here on the Grid Network. And we got a busy race weekend. Supercars, NASCAR, so we'll be on the air Saturday, Sunday with Grid Live. And then Ben will be back on the air on Monday with Grid Encore. Wednesday, Grid Tonight, your weekly motorsports news program. We got Wednesday's episode where Kobe had everyone there to react on the big news of the Daytona Rolex 24 Hours having a penalty. And then we do it all over again next Friday right here with the Women in Motorsports. For Joe Samaniego, Ben Schneider, and Daniel Zeri from Racers, the girls behind the helmet, thank you for watching today's program. We'll see you next time and enjoy the races. Thank you for watching us right here on YouTube. Be sure to subscribe and check out some of our other videos, including Life on the Grid, where we interview folks from the motorsports industry. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.